It begins quietly, not with a headline or a viral tweet, but with a name few remember. In the early 1990s, while most of the world was marveling at dial-up connections and the first flickers of the World Wide Web, one man was staring at his screens with a quiet, obsessive intensity. He wasn't a Silicon Valley mogul, nor a celebrated academic. He was Thomas Elridge, a recluse, a mathematician, a thinker whose predictions would later seem almost prophetic. But in his time, he was dismissed, ridiculed, forgotten. Thomas saw the future differently. He didn't see just computers or networks. He saw the fragile skeleton of a society about to buckle under its own digital weight. He predicted the collapse of systems we now depend on without question: the financial networks, the information highways, even the very trust we place in digital infrastructures. He didn't write for journals or conferences. He wrote for himself, filling notebooks with equations, diagrams, and warnings. In 1994, he published a single paper, obscure, almost impossible to find, detailing what he called the digital cascades. In it, he mapped how the world's reliance on interconnected systems could amplify a single failure into a catastrophic collapse. He explained, in painstaking detail, how a failure in banking networks could ripple into social unrest, or how an unnoticed software vulnerability could trigger global chaos. At the time, few paid attention. The world was too busy celebrating the promise of the internet. I spoke to Dr. Melissa Chang, a cybersecurity historian who has studied Elridge's work. She says, "What's remarkable isn't just the technical accuracy of his predictions, it's the clarity with which he saw human behavior intertwined with technology. He understood greed, negligence, and hubris, the invisible forces that can turn an algorithm into a weapon." Thomas's story is not just about foresight. It's about isolation. He lived in a small apartment on the edge of Boston, surrounded by stacks of books, humming computers, and a blackboard he never erased. Neighbors barely noticed him. Emails from colleagues went unanswered. His warnings were dismissed as paranoia. And yet he persisted, quietly refining his models, obsessively checking details, and documenting every anomaly he could find. The first hint that he might have been right came in 2008. As the world's financial system teetered, analysts traced the collapse back to vulnerabilities he had described in his diagrams more than a decade earlier. No one cited him, no one reached out. Yet, buried in obscure archives, his warnings were already there, prescient, eerily accurate, almost like a whisper from the past. What made Thomas's predictions so unsettling wasn't just the technical foresight. It was the human element. He didn't simply calculate failures in isolation. He mapped how panic spreads, how misinformation travels faster than truth, how people's decisions, small, seemingly inconsequential choices, could amplify a disaster into a crisis. He understood society as a living network, fragile, vulnerable, and unpredictable. I found one of his old notebooks tucked away in a library archive. The pages were filled with scrawled calculations, yes, but also with reflections that felt almost poetic. The machine does not fail. We fail it. The collapse is human before it is digital. Reading his words, it's easy to feel a shiver. It's as if he were warning not just of systems breaking, but of the choices we make every day, the small compromises, the overlooked details, the quiet negligence that compounds over time. Thomas Elridge disappeared from public life in the late 1990s. Some say he moved abroad, others that he simply gave up. His papers were scattered, many lost, some locked in private collections. Yet his influence quietly persisted. Today, cybersecurity experts, financial analysts, and even sociologists unknowingly build on the frameworks he developed, though few know his name. And there's another twist. In recent years,
Leaked documents from tech firms and government agencies reveal that some of the vulnerabilities he predicted have been known and exploited decades ago. It's a sobering thought, a man almost entirely forgotten whose visions of collapse were not just accurate, but actionable. Warnings ignored at our collective peril. So why remember him now? Because in a world hurtling towards greater interconnection, where a single failure can ripple globally in minutes, his story matters more than ever. Thomas Elridge reminds us that foresight is not just about technology. It's about attention, care, and humanity, about noticing the cracks before they widen, about questioning the convenience of systems we trust blindly, about remembering that our creations, no matter how brilliant, are only as resilient as the people who tend them. As we navigate an increasingly complex digital landscape, Thomas's legacy is a quiet challenge. It asks us to look deeper, to question, and to act. To not wait for collapse to teach lessons we could have learned from a forgotten genius. In the end, Thomas Elridge's life was not measured in fame or accolades, but in insight. A vision of the fragile thread upon which our digital world hangs. And perhaps that's the most human lesson of all. The most important warnings are often whispered, not shouted, and the truths that save us are sometimes found in the minds of those we never noticed. So the next time your phone glitches, your bank app freezes, or a headline hints at chaos in the networks you take for granted, remember Thomas, the man who saw the collapse coming long before the world was ready to listen. And maybe, just maybe, the future isn't just about machines. It's about who's awake to notice the warnings before it's too late.